Welcome to Those Who Can't Do. I'm Andrea Forkham, and I am your host. And I am so delighted about the guest that we have today. But before we get to that, I want to tell you why I've also been thinking about this guest pretty much for the past 2 weeks. I have spent the past 2 weeks working in a bunch of middle schools. So I just drift in and sit down. And anyone who's ever been in a classroom before knows that when you enter a classroom and you're not a familiar face, every single eye in that classroom is staring at you aggressively. And these are middle schoolers, right? And to be 100% clear, I am terrified of middle schoolers. I taught high school my entire career, and now I'm teaching college. I can deal with that. I vibe with high schoolers. We're good. Middle school girls are the scariest creatures on planet Earth. So when I walk in, and they give me the up-down look and assessing what I'm wearing and how I walked in and all of that, I revert back to who I was when I was 12 and just want to disappear. So I've been spending all of this time in these classrooms feeling self-conscious. And what I keep hearing is all of this slang that is just so typical of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And actually, I think the middle schoolers are technically Gen Alpha, which is like a heightened version, I would say, of Gen Z. And I'm working with these kids and I'm, chatting with them a little bit because I'm really there to supervise my student teachers that are placed there. But the phrases I'm hearing, so I keep hearing, let him cook or let me cook. And, that literally just means let me do the thing I'm really good at. But the way they are using it is so absurd because they'll be like, hey, get your Chromebooks out. And the kid will be like, let me cook. But they're literally just opening their backpack. That's it. That is all of the cooking that is occurring for those children. And it is so bizarre. So there's a lot of that and a lot of really weird noises where they'll just go, she. Don't know what that means. Couldn't tell you. Probably don't want to know what that means if we're being completely honest. But for whenever I am trying to figure out about Gen Z slang or when I'm trying to learn a little bit more about history, the person I go to is Lauren Chela, who is our guest today. She is a high school world history teacher and a content creator. She's been creating videos for a few years, and she and I are both Southern California girls. So we connected a couple of years ago because we had a couple mutual friends. And it's been so cool to see her grow and see her platform increase as she comes up with these fantastic and hilarious videos where she basically uses Gen Z slang to talk about world history. And so she has series where she's going through and she's telling about the Russian czars, but she's doing it as if it's high school gossip. It's so funny. And if I had had a teacher that could break things down for me like that, I cannot tell you the impact it would have made. Probably would have saved me from some really embarrassing moments, like one of the ones that I discussed with Lauren about my significant lack of Civil War history knowledge. Lauren has also done partnerships with the History Channel and a bunch of other incredible organizations. It's such an honor to have her on the podcast. So without further ado, let's get to it. Welcome to Those Who Can't Do. I have Lauren Chela with me, and I am so excited because we have hung out virtually now for 2-ish years, Lauren. Is that right?
I think so.
Something around that, because I ended up connecting with a couple of teacher content creators, Fraz and Andy Miller. And it turns out that you were actually high school, really good friends with Andy Miller, right?
Yes. So that is such a funny story because people assume that we know each other through TikTok and Instagram because we're both social media teachers, but we have been IRL BFFs since junior high, middle school. We were making, we were on each other's MySpace top eights. So she was really the first adult I knew that was on TikTok, especially on Teacher Talk, and the only one who didn't think I was weird. And then she kind of virtually introduced me to you, and you also didn't think I was weird. And now we're all friends, and it's a surreal experience. But yes, it's awesome.
Yeah. So what was it like in high school for you? Were you a type A student that always got all your homework done and very organized?
As a high school student, I would say that I was not very type A. I had good grades. History was my favorite subject. but I definitely procrastinated and waited till the last minute and was not always the most organized, but I did just, find a way to get it together and make it happen. And I can usually learn best by listening. So as long as I showed up and listened, I could probably be okay. And that kind of translates into my teaching style. I know what I need to say. I can connect with the kids, but I don't have the most organized classroom or lesson plan. And I still just sort of find a way to figure it out.
Well, and I feel like that should surprise absolutely no one because the way that you've kind of like exploded on social media is through telling stories from history, but doing it with like Gen Z slang. And I'm sure that like most of your class, you're not doing exactly that, but there is like a connection to that of trying to make things relatable to your students. So how did you kind of come up with that way of communicating with your students?
Absolutely. So, when you're going through the textbook, like many of the students that we have seen in our classroom, they're not all reading at the same grade level. They have, different levels of comprehension. I have language learners, and, sometimes these textbooks, especially history textbooks, even if you are reading on grade level, are very boring. And, we're learning about things and people that are far away or have passed away or have nothing to do with seemingly what's going on right now. Like it's very boring. So, what I kind of do is, we'll do the lesson, we'll read a textbook, and then just kind of, okay, guys, here's what really happened. And I just would sort of summarize it really quickly and not as dramatically as, the Gen Z teaches history, but I realized the need to sort of front load the information to the kids in a way where they can understand and relate. And then I would go into the textbook. So I found so much more success with that method using a narrative style because I think that my talent is more storytelling, not necessarily memorizing a bunch of historical data. So when I came in from that approach, it was really transformative in my classroom. And then I'm so happy that it translated online. I thought I was going to sound so silly. I thought it was sort of never going to reach anybody beyond the few hundred or 1,000 people that followed me. And when it blew up, like you said, exploded into the millions, I was so shocked. But I think it just shows that there really is this disconnect between people who want to learn history but just like don't understand it because they think it is so boring. So, unfortunately, yes, for my students they will tell you we do have to actually write essays and do real work. So the social media celebrity angle wears off within 5 minutes of them being in my class because it isn't just a 1 minute lesson. They still have to do all of the actual traditional schoolwork as well. But the idea of breaking it down into language that they can understand is just really what all good teachers do. And it doesn't have to be, in slang terms or anything like that. It can be any age. I've had teachers that are amazing of all ages that were 10, 20, 50 years older than me. So just breaking things down in a way students understand is just great teaching.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's so funny because I remember specifically there were times where I would use slang to cause the cringe to happen in class, like a visceral, like communal, like cringe and moan from the class because I would talk about code switching and dialect and all of that. And I would be like, do you guys understand dialect? It means you're speaking a specific way in certain because you're from a certain area or because you're a certain age. And, we code switch all the time and they just weren't getting it. And so I started using like the most like quintessential slang at the time that I could think of. And the reaction was like repulsion. Like I had just offended them at such a deep level. And I was like, do you know why that offends you? It's because when you are in the wrong context, you can feel that it's wrong. Like you're like, this is not how my English teacher should be talking to me and then I would like throw in some 90s slang and stuff too. And they would just like recoil from me because they know intuitively, but sometimes they need us to break it down in a way that, makes sense to their brains. So when you were in high school, did you have any teachers that you felt like did a really fantastic job at that? Any that stand out to you?
Absolutely. And just to comment on your visceral reaction thing, I think that creates an emotional connection for the kids when they're seeing you do that. It creates some sort of memory in their mind. For example, we were learning about how dictators are often charismatic. They don't know what charismatic means. So, but when you tell them that charismatic derives from the word riz, they're just like, oh my gosh. And you're like, see, they're trying to riz up the whole country and they're just stop, stop. But yes, you brought up code switching, and that is so important because I explained to them that exact thing. Like, I don't go into your guys' parties and come talking like this. So you shouldn't come into my classroom talking like this. And it's not that one is bad. It's just we need really the sign of intelligence is being able to do both. People often look down on people when they have different ways of
Yeah.
code switching. And it's like, no, it's a sign of intelligence to be able to navigate different worlds. And, I think when the kids understand it from that perspective, it's very helpful. But yes, anyways, in high school, I definitely had teachers who inspired me. And also in college, I minored in history. So I was able to take some pretty great classes there. But like I said, it was probably in like my higher level AP classes where the teacher would just I remember his name. It was Mr. Azevedo and then also Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Freed. Those were all three of my high school history teachers. They were all male. They were all a little older, but they would just like sit on a stool and just talk. And I think it was the first time that they taught us, like, as if we were competent enough to understand what they were saying, because we were expected to do all of this reading on our own. And so they didn't just give us like worksheets or things like that. They actually talked through the content like at a very high, and you had to just be like keeping up. And I think I just took that responsibility very seriously. I was like listening and I got it and I had already done the reading. So that kind of stuck with me. And I think my college professors did the same thing. The class discussions that we had, I was very loquacious by nature. So that was the first time I really felt like super involved in a class. And I think it was because they like respected us as students, like that we were intelligent enough to take part in like very high level thinking in the classroom. And that was kind of the first time I felt like that was when I was in high school, college. And I want my students to feel that same way. So that's what I try and emulate.
Yeah, and that is such an interesting balance because like we started this conversation talking about how like we're trying to use like language that they can understand and break things down in a way that makes sense to them, but at the same time doing it in a way that's challenging and making them think critically. And that is like that's kind of teacher code switching in a way where we're like, okay, we need to break it down, but also I need you to think about these really big things that like and a lot of things, especially in the history classroom, you're having conversations about topics that can be really difficult to navigate. And you're going to have to talk about politics. As an English teacher, I can usually avoid politics pretty efficiently. But in a history classroom, it's kind of inescapable. And it's really interesting too, because I, grew up in Southern California and then my husband and I moved to Virginia right after we got married. And I lived in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and had not thought about the Civil War in many a year until I arrived there and realized that that was very much part of the local community there is that like, yes, it was a long time ago, but there's still a Confederate flag that hangs off the 95. There's still reenactments where people are dressing up as Confederate soldiers and dressing up as Union soldiers and all of that. And you would think that that would mean that I would automatically just learn a lot of stuff. Like, I'll never forget one of the first times my husband and I went with another couple. And my husband's big history guy, like, he's the type of guy who, like, just sits and reads books about old sailing ships, right? Like, that is exactly his vibe. And so he's like, after church, you know what we're going to do? We're going to just go to the battlefields. And I'm like, great. Yeah, I would love to do that. I would love nothing more than to walk around a battlefield. Thank you so much for putting the razzle dazzle in my day. And so we're just walking on a battlefield. And the wife that came with us, we were literally looking for 4-leaf clovers because I was bored to tears. And my husband and her husband are over there talking about like, oh, you can see the battlements over there. And this is where this, because Fredericksburg is a known battle. Like it's Spotsylvania and Fredericksburg, like those are known battles. It's still a national park, all of that, or a state park. And so they're walking around and they came over to us and they were like, and because they knew I know nothing about history, they were like, Andrea, this is where Abraham Lincoln and George Washington met, actually, is right over here. And I was like, really? And he's like, no. He's like, no, Andrea, they weren't even, there was no they weren't alive at the same time. And I was like, I'm going to be on, I wasn't listening. Like, but I found a four-leaf clover.
Wow. That sounds like an amazing afternoon for me. So can't relate. I'm glad you found it. See, I'm the one you mentioned Southern California. I'm also from Southern California, which is why people tell me that I sound like a 90s Valley girl. And I'm like, well, um, when we go to Disneyland, I'm the one that's trying to get everybody to go see Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln because I am always wanting to learn more about the Civil War, even on my free time. So, most people are like A-lining or
Yeah.
B-lining to Space Mountain. And I'm like, guys, like the next showing starts in 20 minutes. Like we can get in now.
I've been to that part of the park like several times because it's quiet and cool. And so when we took my daughter for her third birthday, that's where we took her for her nap. So I have seen the whole show several times
The
so
Civil
that she
War
could sleep.
is cool, Andrea, in more ways than one. But no, you bring up a great point, and it's just that every student is going to come in with totally different experiences, and where what they believe about the world has been shaped by the experiences that they have where they live, and we're navigating that as teachers, and a lot of that history is very real for a lot of these people, and
Yeah.
challenging some of these, ideas that have popped into their head that they might have been taught, they might have just kind of picked up on it is what we do. I'm not there to, necessarily like change anybody's mind about anything. I'm just kind of there to explain all the different perspectives and the facts. And usually the kids are able to make the connection themselves to all these current events. And kids are much more willing to accept new information and, change their mind and realize like that they made it. They're like, oh, I get it now. Like they will like verbally, like say things like that. So, I think that's really what I love the most about my job is when kids are starting to understand and feel like they can get history and they know why the world maybe is not some of the things in our world are not the best and we can't really change it, but I think that it's empowering for kids to understand why things are that way. There's usually a historical explanation for why things are that way. So that's what I love about
Yeah.
my job specifically.
100%. So, how did you come to be a teacher? Did you always know, like, I love history. I can't wait to talk about history to youths that are half listening to me? Like, what made that choice for you?
Andrea, my students are always listening to me. So no, I'm just kidding. Well, I don't think I knew that I wanted to be a teacher for a long time. I had a different career path. I minored in history. So that's great. Go Aztecs. I use that history minor every day. But I majored in journalism and media studies actually. So I wanted to, tell other people's stories. And when I got married and I moved here, I kind of changed paths, but it's so related because I'm still using that same skill set, I feel like, getting sources, interviewing, telling stories, narrative, um, getting different perspectives on an issue, getting both sides of an issue. I still feel like you have to do that a lot in the history classroom. So, journalism is just the first version of history. So it's like telling people stories who are alive. I'm telling people mostly stories of people who are probably not alive or maybe a little bit older. So it does sort of relate, but I did not envision myself being a teacher at all. People always told me that I should be. I was always like leading the study group and things like that. Like people always told me I should be a teacher. And I guess I just finally listened. And I did sub for 2 years just to make sure, because to get your teaching credential and go back to school is a huge commitment, like financially and otherwise. So I did sub for 2 years and kind of decide, okay, like I actually really like this. I actually don't like being with the younger kids very much. So that kind of guided my path into, single subject social science credential. And I love it now. So I think I've made it. This is my 6th year. I think they say statistically, if you can make it 5 years, like you can make it. So I think I made it.
That's awesome. So, do you have any stories from either when you're 2 years is a long time to sub, and I actually have never subbed. I went straight into the classroom as a teacher, so I always just saw the treatment of subs, and it was just always real bleak. Like if you can sub, I feel like you can most of the time you could handle a classroom because the way students treat subs is crazy. So do you have any stories from like your early sub days or your early days in the classroom where things just went off the rails?
Yes, I do. Okay. Well, most of the time it was fine. Most of the time it was fine, but there's one experience that I will never forget. And I really hope that if any of those kids are listening, if they're probably older now, I don't think they'll forget it either. Actually, maybe they will. But here's the story. Okay. So I was substitute teaching. It was sixth grade, which is just the worst grade because they're not little and cute and they think they're so grown, but they're not. So middle school teachers, I salute you. It's the hardest job. I stand by that. So it was sixth grade. That's one thing. And then I walk in and this teacher, she has no desks, no anything. It's like all, you know, free seating and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's progressive, like, maybe let's see how this
That's a
goes.
choice.
Yeah, okay. I've never seen that in an elementary like setting, but okay. And there's a list and it says, so and so and so and so cannot sit by each other. So and so cannot go to the bathroom. All these different like things that are, that she thought I should know, which is fine. And so all the kids take their little seat wherever and they have their Chromebook on their lap and they're doing their work. And of course, the two boys that she says cannot sit together. And I'm like, well, maybe you should have a seating chart, but they sit next to each other. And I said, oh, honey, could you please go sit over here? And they're immediately, it's a thing, right? And then of course that girl says, oh, can I go to the bathroom? And I said,
Yeah.
well, honey, let's just wait like a little bit until we get our morning work done, and I don't think I'm like very strict. I was assuming that maybe there was a safety reason for all of these things. So the teacher had left her Google Classroom open, like on her computer, presumably so I could be like monitoring their assignment because she had posted like assignments for this. She was very prepared in retrospect. Okay. So could monitor if they were
Yeah.
doing their work. And Andrea, okay, a little bubble pops up like the G chat bubble and it's the kids chatting to each other about me and I can see it. I'm like, do they know I can see it? Like, I don't think they're that bold. They did not know that I could see it. And they were like, this sub is, mean or what's her problem? Why is she staring at us? Like just, like very like not nice things. And they're saying back and forth. And I'm just like, okay, what do you do? Do you tell them that I see? I choose not to tell them because why not? I get paid for
Yeah,
the
I
day.
would just sit there and
I just
read.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And but that was not the worst of it, Andrea. Okay, because these are kids. They're still kids at the end of the day. Okay, this is the worst of it. The teacher, who I don't know where she is. I don't know, but she pops on the chat. Okay, she's literally in the chat, Mrs. Whatever her name was. And I expected her to be like, guys, like, please, just, get back to work. But she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Why? I don't know why she said you couldn't sit next to so and so. Or they were like, Miss, she's not letting us go to the
Oh,
bathroom. And I let them go to the I do not care. Go to the bathroom. The only student that I was and I was still letting
oh
her
my
go
god.
was the one that she specifically said had like these. I was like, oh, and they were like, don't get this sub ever again. We want Miss blah, blah, blah. We want Miss blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I wonder why Miss blah, blah, blah didn't want to come with you guys. And the teacher was like, guys, just get through it.
Right?
Be good. I'm so sorry she's acting that way. I'm gonna bring you guys all brownies when I
Oh
get
my
back.
gosh.
So just, she was completely throwing me under the bus in every way. Like all the things the kids were complaining about were the
The absolute
exact
audacity.
same things that she had told me to do. And so I'm like, oh, and this goes on for because it's elementary school. So you're with these kids the whole day. So this goes
All
on till the
day.
very, very, very end. And they
Yeah.
just keep lying. Like they are lying about everything that's happening. And she's believing it, affirming it, apologizing. Um, and at the end of the day, I just it was packing up. I was like, hey guys, just so you know, I could see all of your chat messages between you and your teacher. And I have never said this before to a class in 2 years, but I will never come back. And I really want to be a teacher. And you guys almost make me not want to be because how you treated me today. So I just thought you should know that. Have a great day. And it was so quiet.
Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah, it was so quiet, and I didn't even leave a note, and I knew they were gonna tell her. I'm like, I do hope you tell her, and I didn't leave a note. I didn't say anything, and
Yeah.
I had kids. I had like 5 or 6 of them that like stayed back after to like apologize. They were like, "No, miss, you were actually really nice." Like I'm like, I know, and so that was an experience. And then a few years later, I was at a school, a different school, and that boy who had been in that class was now like an 8th grader. And he was like, "You look familiar." And I didn't recognize him at first. And he was like, "Did you sub for Miss blah, blah, blah at blah, blah, blah 2 years ago?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And he was just like, "Oh." And it was that boy who wasn't supposed to be there, his friend. And he didn't say anything because I was like at that school, most of the kids liked me because I'm a little bit younger and I'm not so strict and whatever. So he remembered,
Yeah.
and that was the worst experience I've ever had
My
subbing. I
gosh.
couldn't believe that I don't know. Do you think that there's any
Jeez.
good reason in retrospect? Like, was she just trying to diffuse the situation? Because now that I'm a full-time teacher, I'm trying to just maybe understand where she was coming from.
Yeah, I've had situations similar to that where my students have reached out to me. I'm always so suspicious of them though. They're like, she's being mean. I was like, what is she doing? She told us to put our phones away. And I was like, put your phones away, you freaking dingus. What are you
Mhm.
doing? These are
Yeah.
rules that I have. And I tell you to put your phone away all the time. How is she awful and I'm not? Like, why are you snitching to me when she's enforcing the rules that I have always had? And so I could see her just trying to diffuse and be like, okay, like, I don't want them to get worse. So I'm going to address it when I get back. But for right now, I'll just be like, I'm really sorry you guys aren't liking it. Let's talk about it when I get back. And then I would maybe hope that, if there was a no, maybe it explains the other side. Because I remember very specifically one time I was on campus because we were doing like some kind of professional development type thing. And I was working and creating stuff. And I all of a sudden got a bunch of emails, right? And these students are telling me, like, this guy who is subbing is horrible. He is yelling at one of the kids. He threatened to fight one of the kids. And I'm like, surely not. This cannot be real. And then but then I start getting emails from like, how you have like the kids that you actually trust, right? The ones who
Mhm.
never have ever caused an issue ever in your class, and you start getting emails from them and then you're like, oh no, like it's actually a problem. And like that sub snatched the sunglasses off of the face of one of my students, uh, which like is an insane thing. Like you don't put hands on a student, like you just don't. And apparently, the reason he did it is because this kid came in a little bit late, which he always did. But when kids came in late, I didn't make it a big thing. I would keep track of it, but they would come in and I'd be like, hey, glad to see you, have a seat. Apparently, this kid came in, those sunglasses that were really popular that had like shutters on them almost for a while. Like
The
they had like
the pit
plastic stripes
vipers,
across.
the
I
stunner
don't even know what
shades.
they're
We're not that
called.
old, and
I think
okay,
so. I don't
okay,
know what they're called.
all
Lauren, I'm
right,
older than you.
okay, maybe.
I don't know what they're called. We're going to say it's those. Either way, like really silly sunglasses that they were wearing into class. And this sub comes up and he said, you better take off those glasses. And the kid looked at him. He's like, no. Why do I have to take off these glasses? And he's like, because I told you to. And I'm like, why are you starting a fight with a kid about wearing sunglasses? Who cares? Like, it's not causing a disruption until you started a fight with him about it. Like, just let that kid live. If he wants to wear sunglasses inside, I don't care. Like, I would probably like make a joke with him. about it maybe and be like, is it dark in here? Or is it, too bright in here for you? And then, we'd laugh about it and I would not care. But this kid was like, I'm not taking off my sunglasses. And so the sub reached and tried to snatch them off of his face. And so the kid smacked the sub's hand away and stood up. And then a bunch of kids separated them and the kid walked out of the class. And I'm just like, to me, that sub escalated that so out of control. What adult in that situation is going to start a fight with a kid over stupid sunglasses? So from the teacher perspective, I was like, don't treat my babies like that. I was mad because I'm like, and were they being disrespectful initially? Probably, because as kids do with subs, pretty much always they're testing and seeing what they can get away with. But I was really upset that I'm like, you're the adult. I know the kids are difficult. In that class, I had 42 freshmen in a fifth period right after lunch. So to be clear, it was not an easy class, but we're the adults. We got to be the adults in those situations. And I still can't fathom what that guy was thinking. And I know that he was not allowed to sub for me anymore, although I doubt he would have tried. But, we had that rule. But I don't know, have you come to any kind of conclusion about that teacher, that maybe she was just trying to diffuse?
I think I was so angry at her in the moment, and what's crazy is if I didn't have that chat up, the day would have not have been that bad. I would have left thinking "Oh, that was fine." So, maybe she did diffuse it. Maybe she has to deal with those kids all day long, and it was also a 6th grade class. So, looking back, now that I am a full-time teacher, I can probably see that maybe this woman was in survival mode. And she
Right.
she wasn't she's not out for me. She's not, she was probably just doing her best. So, now that I'm a little older, a little wiser, I have a lot more grace towards people. Now that I'm also a mother now too. So I think I just have a lot more grace even towards the
Yeah.
kids cuz I've been
Yeah.
there. And the sunglasses situation, I would not have done that because chances are that kid probably would have sat down and in 2 minutes taken them off. But I'll have
Right.
kids
Exactly.
that wear sunglasses, and I don't like them wearing sunglasses in class because I need to see their eyes for obvious reasons in high school. But,
Mm-hmm.
you like I said, usually they wear them and then they kind of just forget that they're on. It's not a problem, and then they just sort of take them off. And if they do, I just kind of when I'm walking around, just kind of be like, tap their desk and be like, sunglasses, and they'll just be like, oh yeah, and it's not a huge deal at all. And
Right.
if they refused, I would be like, that's kind of weird. Like, that's suspicious. And,
It's
make it a
weird
joke.
flex, my guy.
Yeah. And then they would, like you said, but those are all techniques that we use to diffuse. And if they seriously won't take it off, then it's then I have to be like, well, I know that this kid is something wrong. Maybe they've been
Right.
crying, maybe there's probably something there, and we have such an advantage over substitute teachers because we know while these kids might be doing something. So for example, I saw a girl one time, and she had her head down, she had her backpack up, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's trying to get out of learning my really important lesson. And I walked over there and I kind of just saw her, and she had been crying, she was crying. After lunch, something happened.
Oh.
She's a sweet girl. She never caused, and so I just kind of was like, okay, like it's fine. Just let her just do
Yeah.
that. It's not, it doesn't happen every day. And you just cannot get
Yeah.
into a power struggle with the kids. You're not going to win. It doesn't matter most of the
Yeah.
time. So I don't know. I've definitely learned a lot. I think everybody
Yeah.
should have to good for you. You just did trial by fire. But I think everybody should sub for at least actually no, I think the whole general population should sub. I think it should be jury duty. Especially if you have
100%.
children in the public
Agreed.
school system.
Yes.
But I really think that I've seen so many teachers go through the entire credential program and then step into a classroom for the first time and they hate it and they can't do it and they can't
Yeah.
get their money back. And for
Yeah,
that reason, I really
exactly.
just think they make you do student teaching after you've done all the academic stuff because it's not this
Yeah,
it's
after
hard.
all
You
of your
can get
money is
better.
sunk in. all of it.
Yes, like you can get better at curriculum. You can get better at, you're learning your content. You can get better at learning like strategies. But like if you can't get the kids just like engaged and you don't like that dynamic, like as an adult, like if you don't want to do that every day, like you're not gonna like that career. And I've seen a few people kind of go through that and it's really sad. So, yeah, you either just kind of are going to
Yeah.
like it. I always say you'll kind of know after like a day. Like you'll either be like that was really hard, but I can do it. That was still fun, or you'd be like that was terrible. I don't ever want to do this again. And most of the time it kind of stays that
Yeah.
way. Maybe I don't know if you feel the same.
100%. Yeah, I remember my first day in the classroom thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. Like this is so much fun." Like I just remember thinking like, "I can't believe that this is a real job that I'm getting paid for. I get to talk to these kids, meet these cool humans and tell them about my favorite books. Like how lucky am I?" Like it truly was like one of
Yes.
those light bulb moments for me. But for sure, because I did not sub, I had a lot of mistakes that I made on the
Mhm.
way, which we will share with everybody when we get back from a quick break. So we will be right back. And welcome back to Those Who Can't Do. I am dying to hear, Lauren, if there were any mistakes you made, especially early on in your career where you thought something was going to work really, really well, and maybe it went up in flames or it went great with one class and then just bombed with another. Because I know for me, like I would teach several periods and period one would like crush it. And then period two would collapse into anarchy. So I don't know if you have anything like that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So you brought up how you didn't student teach and how you just kind of jumped in and made a lot of mistakes. I subbed and I still made a lot of mistakes. So my first day, like our principal has this initiative, a great initiative. Like the admin where I work is really wonderful generally. So they had us, stand at the door and greet the students. This is before COVID, so shake their hands and all of that great stuff. And it's like the first period of the day. I'm like so excited. And the kids come in, they're like, whatever her name was. And she was like, hi, I'm blah, blah. And I say, hi, I'm Lauren. Like, I was not used to introducing myself as Mrs. Chela. I was a newlywed. That wasn't even my name and like I've just never,
Yeah.
at that point I wasn't like too much older than them. So it didn't like click at all. And I would say about like one out of three times when the kid would very politely introduce themselves, I'd be like, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Lauren." Like, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no, no, I'm not. Like, I'm Mrs. Chella. I'm so sorry." And like they were so nice about it. But I definitely agree with what you're saying about like things breaking down throughout the day. um, like first period is so quiet no matter what. They always say they're my tester period, and the last period they're so dead and so just full from lunch that like they will not do anything no matter what. So, the sweet spot is really period two, three, four, five. Um, one
Yeah.
time I tried to do like a World War I simulation where we made like desks, trenches, and I had paper balls of different colors, and they had to be like, the triple entente and the central powers, and they had to like, throw the paper balls across the room, and they had to try and like cross over into no man's land, and then, realize that it was impossible to cross over into no man's land without getting hit, which is like the point of the lesson of why there was a stalemate on the Western Front. And, it was like such a
Hmm.
great idea. And, like I said, those earlier classes like did a pretty good job with it. And then like after lunch though, I had a class that was like all boys and it just fell apart. They just started kind of like building the desks like really, really high up to the ceiling. I was like, okay, that's not safe. And then they all knew each other. So they were just like not listening. They were just like throwing. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it got out of control. And then so I tried to like dial it down for the next period, but then they thought it was boring because they were just like sitting on the floor. And, I don't know what to do. I retired that activity. Like, I feel like when you try to do something that's like fun at the older grades, they just kind of are like, just stop. Like when we go through a PD, like I hate when
Yeah.
someone says, "Oh, stand up," walk around. Like, I don't want to walk around. Like, I don't. Like, I know who you are. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need to know. Like, I don't want to go to the parking lot. I don't want to know your why. Like, I don't. I just want to learn and like talk to you.
I
Like, that's
don't
what
want to
like
know your why.
I I just like, it's okay. I can just I know how to talk to someone. Like, I don't need to do that. Like, I would love to just be like, "Hey, how about 10 minutes just go chat around?" Like, that's fine.
Right.
And I guess
Yeah.
I tried to force a lot of these like fun like walk around activities because like that's what they tell you to do in your credential program. And I just feel like maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just not like, I don't know, maybe the kids can sense that I'm not into it, but I feel like it always falls flat with older kids. And I just have so much more success. I'm
Yeah.
like, hey guys, we're just gonna take notes. We're gonna take notes. It's fine. And we're gonna just talk about
Yeah.
it after. And
Yeah.
that's with our voice, with our words, and like
Right.
that's it. We're not like, we don't have to do like an interpretive dance. We don't have to like make an acrostic. Like, we can just like learn. And I think they just
Yeah.
maybe appreciate it because, like, again, like how going back to that first story, like when you're treating them just like they are adults capable of understanding things. So, what do you think?
Yeah.
Because maybe is it me? Are there other teachers out there that are doing really fun activities and I'm really just boring? And that teacher was right. Like, is it me or do you do fun activities?
I mean, so one of the activities that I did right before I left, I was that freshman class that I taught. And again, in California, class sizes are very big in a way that, like,
Yes.
people outside, I think, of California or in areas that are more rural, they don't understand when I say the class sizes are big. Like, I'm saying we had like 42 kids in one class. And that's difficult for a lot of people to comprehend how much having 10 more kids in that classroom can impact, but it's a lot, especially when it's like freshman, like 6th or 7th period. So, one of the things that I did that was so much fun and it was real, I think the reason that it went well most of the time, like I would say 90% of the time that I did it, it was really successful, is because the chaos that was, of course, going to happen was exactly the result I wanted. Um, so I would basically set it up where I told the students ahead of time, like, we're starting a new unit. You're going to come into class tomorrow and it's going to be weird. Like, prepare your heart, souls, and minds because when you come in, it's going to be weird. I need you to go with it. And they would get real nervous. And I'm like, it's going to be fine. I'm going to be here, but it's going to be weird. And I just need you guys to roll with it because if you're too cool for it, it's going to suck. So don't be too cool for it. And like, they're like, okay. So I would decorate my classroom. And this is the only time I ever did it. I can't think of a single other time that I put in this much effort to an activity. I do not want people to think that this was my norm, that like every day I had a classroom transformation. This is the one time I would do it a year. And I would get green streamers and green balloons, and I would hang stuff from the ceiling, and I would get like jungle themed party supplies. And I, only had to really buy all that stuff once because then I had it all in a box. And I would decorate the whole classroom. I would play Welcome to the Jungle super loud. And then I had a slide up that said, Welcome to the Jungle. Please have a seat. But I would have all of the desks and everything pushed away from the center of the classroom. And I would just have one box sitting in the center of the classroom that says, Do not open. So then class would start and I would change the slide to a new slide that had a timer on it. And it said, the game has begun. And I said, the game has begun. And I sit down. And on the slide, it would have instructions that tells them, like, open the box. And then in the box, there were instructions. Okay, there's 3 balloons in here. You have to pop through. So it was almost like an escape room type thing. But I did not make teams. I did not tell them how to do it. All the instructions were there. And the goal was that they had to build a tower as tall as they could. They had 15 minutes, form teams, build a tower. Whoever has the tallest tower wins. And I had a bunch of mini things of Play-Doh and a bunch of toothpicks. And that's all I gave them. And it was enough that if they split it up, that all teams would have enough. But I would basically like just sit in the corner. I refused to answer questions. I refused to scold anyone for bad behavior. I kept it safe, but like if kids were just being obnoxious, I did nothing. I just shrugged and sat in the corner. And every single time, it was such a perfect illustration of what happens in Lord of the Flies, which is the book we were
I
introing,
was saying,
because
yeah,
kids would start
I
out.
was trying to think. Yes, I was like, what book? What is she doing? I'm thinking she teaches
It was
English. I was like, what book is that? And I was like, this
mhm.
has to be Lord of the Flies. Yes.
Yes. And it's so perfect because the very first time I did it, I couldn't have scripted it better, because there was one boy who was like, "Okay guys, we're going to separate these out so it's fair and each team is going to have the right amount." And a girl goes, "No, we're not." And she scooped half the supplies and walked away. And like they all looked at me to fix the problem, and I just shrugged. And then it just descended into anarchy. I mean, they started build because I didn't specify in the instructions what they had to build the towers out of. So they had the Play-Doh, but then very quickly they're like, let's build up chairs. And that same group where that interaction happened, somebody tried to use some of their glass Tupperware, which fell off and shattered, and there was broken glass all over the place because the girl who had taken half the supplies knocked their tower over. And I refused to scold. And like one kid came up to me, was like, "Hey, can we knock over towers?" And I was like, I'm, I, I'm just here. And the light in their eyes would come on and they would be like, yes. And so we would wrap it up and I'd have them do a reflection and I would tell them, like, I just want you guys to sit here and think about your behavior over the past 15. You had 15 minutes where the normal rules didn't apply. Where normally I would say, don't act that way, act right, all of that. And I just let you be whoever you're going to be. And some of you even asked because you knew you shouldn't have done that, because you knew it wasn't a nice thing to do. But the way you lit up when you found out you wouldn't get in trouble for it, that is why this book has stood the test of time. Because the second that we are told, like, oh, there's no rules, they're all out, out for themselves and all of that. And like, oh my gosh, it was madness and chaos every time. Friendships were ruined. It was a beautiful thing. Like it was just so much fun to teach. But I mean, there were times where kids got like their feelings hurt. And when the Tupperware broke, another kid had to buy that kid Tupperware and like stuff like that. And I think the reason something that interactive worked is because what I wanted was chaos. But if I was trying to keep
Mhm.
things like nice, there's no way. It would have descended into chaos anyways.
That sounds like such an amazing activity. And, good thing that since there was flying glass everywhere, I guess it's a good thing that kid had sunglasses on to protect him. So,
Honestly, right? The eye
wow,
protection had to be there.
maybe that's why he wouldn't take them off from there going forward because he didn't know what was going to happen.
He's like traumatized. He's like, I feel unsafe now in this place. There was glass last time. It was too much. So did you ever have any other big moments where you were like, oh, I screwed this up, other than just feeling like doing the kind of, because I feel like a big part of becoming a teacher is figuring out what works for you, not necessarily what works for like all classrooms everywhere. Did you have any other moments where you were like, oh yeah, that's not going to be me for sure?
I don't think I've had like one defining like terrible day where I just like everything just fell apart and I was like, crying in a corner and had like a total breakdown. I think I just had these ideas of like what sort of teacher I was going to be. And, they tell you that you have to, write referrals, you have to give detentions, you have to do all of this stuff, or, you know, I was just always so afraid of getting in trouble. So I think I was doing things like that I thought I was supposed to be doing, like writing kids up or, giving homework or, having them do like the same exact routine every day just to keep things like under control in case someone popped in for an observation. And I think just what I realized is like you have to just be yourself because the kids can sense that you're being disingenuous. They can like smell fear and I just don't like like I kind of like what you said there, Andrea. Like I don't want to be that teacher. Like I don't want to call home. I don't want to get you in trouble. Like I really don't. And I know sometimes it's unavoidable if it's like a safety thing, but I really don't. And this is actually a tip that I heard from you, Andrea, before I knew you in real life or on digital life. And, you know, that was part of what I did was I kind of got onto like teacher talk and I just kind of, found some advice from people who have been in it. And you said this and you're like, there's three words that you can say that will diffuse 99% of situations. I totally agree. And it's, are you okay?
Yeah.
That diffuses like almost everything. And so, when a kid says, a bad word or something, whatever, if just ups up, just like, hey, are you okay? And sometimes they're just like, yeah, yeah, I am. Sorry, 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 And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Or like they really aren't okay. And they're glad somebody asked. And when they realize, I think the other thing you said was you're not in trouble. Like
Yeah.
they just I would say 99% of the time, I'm able to just resolve that in class with that student, like in-house without escalating it to getting anybody else involved. So I think you just have to find what works for you. I know some teachers have, a system that works for them. That's what works for me and the students in my classroom with the personality that I have. And, it's kind of a lot for our students because if they're going to like 6 or 7 different classrooms, and it is kind of hard because every teacher has like different rules of what they allow and what their personality is like. And, so the kids are like having to kind of switch up, what's expected of them in every classroom. And they're there all day, and it's hard. It's hard being a teenager most of the time.
Yeah.
So that's kind
Yeah.
of the realization that I have had is like I just have to be myself and relate to these kids how I know how and hope for the best. And that's what works.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you think about like that, just checking in with students, like saying, are you okay? And I've had it before where I had, this big football player, like massive kid, like well over 6 feet. And I took him into the hall because he was just being so rude. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I've never had this issue with him. Brought him to the hall and I'm like, are you okay? And he just started weeping, like the most tears coming out of his face. And I was like, oh, whoa. Like, I'm not sure, like, oh my gosh. So like reaching up to pat him on the shoulder and be like, okay, you're gonna be okay. Like,
Mhm,
do you want to take a walk? Do you want to go see counseling? Like, and try and get them, some help.
mhm,
But I think that so often we think about it from the perspective of like teacher to student, but I also think about teacher to teacher or admin to teacher, how powerful somebody saying, like, are you okay? Could be on a day that we're having like just a really rough time because there were many, many times where I was really frustrated and I felt like my concerns or my frustrations weren't being heard. And I think about, wow, that would have been incredible to have somebody come in and be like, hey, are you okay? And for me just to be like, well, no, no, I'm not. And here's why. Like that, I think we're all kind of at a place where it's very hard to be defensive when someone shows true empathy to us like that. And
mhm.
kind of allows us to be human, you know?
Yes, and you mentioned the hallway, and I agree with that. I think just remove the audience like
Yeah.
remove the audience. There's never a reason to do that in front of the like almost never. There's never a reason. So, yes,
Yeah.
with the older kids where they're not like, 5 years old, they're not going to get lost. You can just be like, "Hey, take a walk
Right.
or go sit outside for like do you want to sit outside for like 10 minutes?" Like I don't even need to like just go sit outside for like 10 minutes and they will. They probably do just need a break. And
Yeah.
yeah, those are such great management techniques, Andrea. So I totally agree with you about, managing the students that we have the same way that we would like to be managed. Cause like, they
Yeah.
have to be there. And I think most of the time
Right.
they're doing their best. And you brought up that big football player. I think it's hard for teenage boys. Like they do not like,
Mhm.
get. It's hard for them because if they show any emotion at all, they get teased. They get called names, and it's just such a charged environment for them. And they are usually the ones that have like the outbursts and things like that. And they are like not really ever given spaces to just talk about anything at all. So that's a lot
Yeah.
of where it comes from.
Yeah. I think so too. Honestly, I think over the time that I've had kids kind of burst into tears like that when I've checked in on them, a majority of the time where I saw a lot of tears, it was the boys because a lot of times girls will cry with each other. They don't,
Mhm.
I mean, I would have girls coming and crying with me as well. But most of the time, if it was a situation like that where I would like bring them out in the hall, like a lot of times the girl would be like, I'm fine. And then would go talk to their friends and cry with their friends. Guys don't do that
Mhm.
very often. And so, I would say, are you okay? And it's the first time they've had somebody check on them like that. And they just
Yeah.
fall to pieces. And there was another thing that I did when I had a couple of kids that they were tough nuts to crack. And I remember very specifically, like one of the girls hung out with some of the boys who were gang affiliated and all of that. And she came in and she was just tough, right? Like she like took no bull from anyone. She was one of those kids. It was very intense. And so what I did is on days where I noticed that she was really like seemed like she was struggling or seemed kind of checked out and sad, I would write her a little card. And I would just kind of very discreetly, when I'm walking around checking in on kids, I would just put the card on her desk and I would keep going, making sure like other kids didn't see it or anything. And it would literally just be like, hey, I just noticed you seem a little bit not yourself today. I want you to know I care about you. I'm here if you need anything. And I would just leave it at that. And I really didn't think I was getting to her at all because for months and months and months, she was just the same way, very like deadpan kind of face, wouldn't really interact. And then about 3/4 of the way through the year. So, I mean, I've been working with this girl for like 7 or 8 months at that point. And she came in and she wrote me this long letter saying how much those notes meant, how she kept them, and how like me checking in with her really like helped her feel like, she can come back the next day and all of that. And like, we just don't know sometimes the impact of like that those little interactions where we're like, oh, like they clear that didn't work. Like I gave it a shot, but they didn't, they didn't pick up on what I was putting down. But sometimes we don't find out until, months or even years later. So it's kind of just planting seeds and then hoping, there's a garden for somebody at the end of that.
Absolutely. I've had students that were so disrespectful, so immature, that I failed, and they come back the next year and they're like different people. They're so kind. They're
Yeah.
so it's just it's probably not you as a teacher.
Yeah.
And these kids, we have no idea what they're going through. And I love the way that you said that because I've experienced the same thing where they come back weeks later or months later or even like after they've graduated, like on social media, they'll tell me like years later and they didn't even
Yeah.
realize it affected them until years later. So, and you
Yeah.
might, or maybe you never know how it affects them, and that's okay too. You just have to do the
Yeah.
best that you can with what you have and the kids that are in front of you and just the ones like I always say, like in the older grades, like if you don't want to do anything, like I can't make you. I can't like physically
Right.
make you, like,
Right.
right? So I just have to like give you the opportunity and like provide opportunities and how like I'm here to help. I'll just say like, are you gonna do any work today? No. I'm like, okay, well, let me know if you change your mind. Like, I'm here to help. Like, just, you know, let us do our thing over here. And they're usually like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, "All right."
Yep.
And, usually when they see that, like, everyone else is kind of working, like, and they, I just since they're not working, I have lots of time to chat with them and get to know them. Um,
Yeah.
After a few weeks or months, that guard will come down.
Yeah, 100%. So, one of the things we do on the podcast is I get some questions from the audience, and then we kind of take a shot at answering and giving a little bit of advice. So, one of the questions that was submitted is how do you deal with micromanaging admin who use it's what's best for the kids to justify mandates that are actually not best for kids? So, I don't know if you wanted to take the first shot at that one.
My admin is really great, and I feel for people that aren't, but I have been in situations where you are being micromanaged. I would say you just do what is best for your kids because the chances of anybody actually coming in and checking on all of these little small mandates being enacted are probably going to be very slim within a few weeks or months. So just go with it for a little bit. But most of the time, teachers outlast admin. So just go with
Yeah.
it for a little bit. Just smile. but really, like, there's a national teacher shortage and you're in there with those kids and you want to be there, and there's not a line of people like waiting to replace you. So if you have something that is
Yeah.
working that in your classroom, enact whatever it is like that they want you to enact, like to whatever degree that you can, but I wouldn't worry about it. Because it'll probably, I've noticed with leadership like that, they're doing that for a reason because they're trying to prove something to someone. And once that fad passes, it will be on to the next thing. And then they'll get a new job and they'll be someone like that's just the cycle of education. So
Yep.
just go with it for a few weeks and it'll probably pass.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I think there were times, and it usually has to do with data collection, right? Where they're like, you're gonna have to collect this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay. And then like you don't die on any of the hills you don't need to die on. I think that's a big part of just learning to do this whole like being in the education system and recognizing that you're right. Like most of the time, teachers outlast the admin. It's very rare to have admin that sticks around for a very long time, especially if they're bad admin. They usually end up kind of getting bounced from school to school. And so I've never seen bad admin stick around longer than 3 years. So if you can just like not choose that battle and just, all right, man, like, and you continue to do all you can for the kids, it honestly, you're right. Like they're usually not going to be checking in on a lot of that stuff because they're trying to use it to pad their resume so they can move on to their next job. Like, oh, I enacted this specific PBIS strategy and it was great. And it's like, was it? Or did you just want something to put on your resume? Like, let's be honest. All right. So before you go, can you share what you've got going on, any new projects, where people can find you, and all that good stuff?
Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like I have a lot going on because I'm a full-time teacher and I have a baby and I'm trying to do all of the things, but people can find me on Instagram and TikTok. So on Instagram, my handle is my name at Lauren Chela, and on TikTok it's at Lauren Chela 92. So I'm working on some projects there that you can see. Some of them I can't quite talk about yet, so just stay tuned, but I'm really interested to connect with other educators or anybody who is interested to learn more about history.
Yeah. And anybody who's interested in learning more about Gen Z slang, also in conjunction with the history.
I need to just be honest with you guys. I'm 31 years old. In case I was fooling anybody out there, I'm not Gen Z. I'm so sorry. If you thought that. So, the students in my classroom are. So I'm about like one day ahead of you in knowing what's going
Right.
on. So by the time I get it to you, it's probably already changed. But we're out here and we're trying.
Right. We're doing our best. All right, guys. On that note, we will be right back. And welcome back to Those Who Can't Do. I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Lauren. I absolutely adore her. Her videos crack me up. I cannot tell you how many times my mom has specifically called me and asked me if I have seen Lauren's content because she is just like such a big fan of Lauren, as am I. And so it's really fun to actually have her on the podcast. And I know this episode's going to be one of my mom's favorites now because she's just such a fan. And Lauren's videos are so funny. Just hearing history retold in Gen Z slang, there is something about it that is just chef's kiss. I absolutely love it. So one of the things we always do is find out from you guys what kind of things your students are up to in class. And I have seen this so many times, both in the What Are Those Kids Doing posts on Friday, but also I've been seeing it just on TikTok and Instagram. I think there's some kind of a trend right now where kids are making or purchasing a cake for their teachers that say, I'm sorry we talk so much, or I'm sorry we blab so much, like something along those lines. And I am beyond delighted that that's the current trend instead of the like devious licks trend where kids were stealing toilets out of bathrooms at school and stuff like that. Like what a treat and delight for all of us that instead the trend is buying a cake for the teacher that you've been driving crazy all year. I'm I was never one of the teachers that was too afraid to eat the cake that was brought by a student. I know so many teachers that are like, that would go right in the trash. I would never eat anything homemade. I got to tell you, some of my students, like, they can cook. I'm going to let them cook and bake me all the things. I've never been poisoned or drugged so far. So I'm just going to keep living in the naivety that everyone has a very clean home and they are baking and cooking things with love for me. Another thing that was submitted for what those kids are doing this week is a simile. And the simile was Romeo was as gentle with Juliet as toilet paper. And like, I could just see this kid being like, what do I have to be gentle with or it falls apart? What do I have to really make sure is like taken care of? And he's just like, toilet paper. That's it. That's what I'm gonna connect here. I just love like the chaotic energy of that kind of a simile. If you have something that your students have been doing this week, I want to hear about it. And you can submit it on Fridays for those who can't do, or you could email us at andrea@human-content.com, or you can find the whole podcast family at Human Content Pods. And of course, this is a brand new podcast, and I so appreciate you guys reaching out with your reviews and your feedback and your emails. It means the world to me if you could subscribe and leave a review, and we just might start giving some shout outs and you might hear your name. If you want to check out the full video episodes, they are up every week on YouTube at Educator Andrea. Thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Andrea Forkham. A very special thank you to our guest, Lauren Chela. Our executive producers are Andrea Forkham, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor is Andrew Sims. Our engineer is Jason Pertizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. Our recording location is the Indiana State By College of Education. To learn more about our Those Who Can't Do's program disclaimer and ethics policy, submission, verification, and licensing terms, you can go to podcasterandrea.com. Those Who Can't Do is a human content production. Thank you so much for watching. If you're like me and you're thinking, gosh, I really need more Those Who Can't Do in my life, you can start your binging right now by clicking on that playlist button right over there. New episodes are out every Thursday, so please subscribe and join us each week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.